Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Dustin Tavella. As you possibly might know, Dustin Tavella won the 2021 season of America's Got Talent, and for good reason. Not only is his magic strong, but he performs with a lot of soul. He's got storytelling in the magic, he's got unbelievable miracles, and he's so sweet and awesome and likable, and his story is even more incredible. So in this episode, you're going to hear not only about how he did it, but also how he made an amazing show that he's doing right now, as well as more behind the scenes about what makes his magic unique and how you can implement some storytelling and messages into your magic without it being weird or corny. Dustin is the king of amazing storytelling and messages in his magic, and you're going to learn as much from this episode as I did. So here it is, a wonderful episode with the one and only Dustin Tavella. Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and we are here with the one and only Dustin Tavella. Dustin, how are you?
What's up, man? Thank you for having me on. This is awesome.
I am so excited to chat with you, especially after having seen your show in Branson and just loved it and loved all the stuff you've been up to for a while. So excited to get into all of it. Let's start sort of at the very beginning. How did you even get started in magic?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I feel like my story oftentimes either inspires people or just makes them. So, when I was young, like any kid, loved magic, got a little magic kit with the plastic toys and all these things.
Yeah.
But there was a flea market by us. My uncle got me like my first professional magic trick. He got me scotch and soda. It was like real coins. It was made out of metal. Right? Yeah. And I was like, man, I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't know you could like buy magic tricks, like real magic tricks. And at this point, I was like, 10 years old, and I just kind of got obsessed. I went back and like would get more stuff from this magic shop. I got the change bag and the coloring book and the old school like zombie ball, like the floating silver ball thing and these kinds of things. And I would dress up like a clown. I'll twist balloons and do birthday parties. And it was wild because I'm like this little 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid doing birthday parties, and people were like, oh, it's a kid clown, which now sounds horrifying. I feel like when I was young, people weren't as scared of clowns then. But anyways, I would do things for banks and grocery stores. And then when I was like 13, I feel like it was like, I don't know, I got way more self-conscious of like being a clown in front of my friends because it was like not cool or something. And so I kind of just like laid it down. And when I stopped doing the clown stuff, I stopped doing magic stuff too, because for some reason I was never like, I can do magic, just not dressed like a clown. And so I just like stopped altogether and then never really looked back, man. I mean, through high school was doing music stuff. After high school was doing music stuff. I was a music artist for a while. I was producing and writing. I had a bunch of my own music, but I was also producing and writing for other people, for television and film and doing video editing stuff. And really it's crazy, man. We were doing some music stuff, and then my wife and I, along with my sister, had started this homeless ministry in LA. And through that, like met this dude who was a realtor and did magic on the side. And I was at a point of like kind of over the music career and the way that, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of like how much social media kind of took over music. It was like, I wasn't even making music anymore. I was just trying to post things on Instagram.
And like,
yeah. And it was just, and so anyways, I was with him one day at a coffee shop and he busted out like a deck of cards with some coins. And all of a sudden it was like, there was all these people gathered around, different ages, different skin colors. And this was the reason I started doing music. Like I love people. I love creating connection, which is why I think the social media stuff burnt me out a little bit. And I just saw this dude with like no influence and no platform, creating an experience for people who normally wouldn't be engaging at all. And it's like a bomb went off in my heart, dude. And I was like, this is just, I remember when I was a kid, I used to love magic. Like I need to do this. And I was like watching them. I'm like, I feel like I could do this. I've been in the entertainment world enough. I know how to put stuff together. And so I called my mom and had her like send out all my old magic tricks from up in the attic. And
oh my gosh.
And dude, and it was crazy because around that time I had kind of stepped back from my music career and we were doing the homeless stuff. I was catching up with a friend who had just done a movie, she had just done a movie with Tyra Banks, who was hosting AGT at the time. And my wife the one day was on a run and she came back, she said, I don't know why I was running, and I was just kind of praying and thinking, and she's like, I feel like you're going to win America's Got Talent. And I was like, that's hilarious because it's America's Got Talent, not America's Got 4 days of experience.
Oh my God.
And I like just started doing magic stuff. But anyways, I was telling my friend this, and she was like, "Oh, you should send me some stuff. I'll show it to Tyra. I'm having lunch with her in a couple of days." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And I hung up the phone and realized I didn't have anything to send Tyra Banks. I'd been doing music for like a week, or magic for like a week. And so anyways, I made a little fake video, and then we can talk about that later. But basically, man, I didn't get on that season or the next season. And then the third year is the year that I won. So it had only been like a 2-year span that I had been doing magic.
From getting back into it to season 16. Yeah. What year was that?
2021.
2021. Wow. So you've you got back in the game like at COVID, like, at
basically. Yeah. And that's what was crazy too, was like when I was like, man, we should start doing magic shows and maybe we should focus on this. The pandemic hit, and so we couldn't do any shows, which made me feel even that much more unprepared. But it is one of the things that I'm passionate. The reason I fell in love with magic is because of that thing it does to a person, right? The hope or the childlikeness that it instills in a person. And we've always been passionate about wanting to inspire people and instill hope in people. And to see this thing bring people to a place of wonder, and to know that like to bring them to a childlike place, to be able to share stories. Really, I feel like even right now, I don't feel like I'm super passionate about magic. I feel like I'm passionate about connecting with people. And magic is like a fun visual thing to add to stories, to just get people like, I don't know, man. It's once we started doing this stuff, I just never looked back, bro. It's been magic always, every day now.
Awesome. Okay, so first of all, there's so many things in there that I want to talk about, but let's go back and talk for a minute about music. First of all, like, what were you like? I know you did a lot of different things in music, but like, what were you doing most prominently in the music space? Because it seems like things were working pretty well in music. It's not like you were playing a guitar on the street corner or anything. Like you were doing some work for some important people. What did that look like?
Yeah. So, while I was in LA, got to know a lot of producers and stuff like this, worked with some guys that work within radio. And so for me as an artist, we had songs that we were, pushing at radio, and we worked alongside like ESPN and things like this. I did a song for the 100th anniversary of the Rose Bowl, and there's just cool opportunities like this. But also just from being there, I got to know other artists. And for me, I think the thing that didn't work for me as an artist was I just love creating. And so I personally feel like I never found my style, right? Like I love the acoustic stuff. I love hip hop stuff. I love urban stuff. I love pop stuff. I love even some like ukulele beach stuff sometimes. And it was a bad thing for me as an artist because I never really found my style, but also from a production standpoint, it was great because, like some company calls and they need some ukulele music to,
and you're like, sure, I can do that.
Yeah. And then like some rapper calls and they want some hip hop beat. They want like a hook for their song.
So,
like,
but is that what you did in music looked like? Is you were basically like producing and making the actual soundtracks for different types of things from ESPN rappers to whatever? Is that kind of what you were doing in music?
Yeah, for sure. Within music and within television and commercial stuff. But I was also recording stuff for myself and there were some spots in the country where we had songs that did fairly well. Randomly, I had a #1 music video on CMT. I mean, I don't do country music, but we did it was like a club song with like a bit of like this country sound. And so, yeah, just some random stuff like that. And it was cool because we did have some friends who were very successful. And then we had some people who we knew who were producing music for a long time, and they were, older and still doing like stay up till 6 a.m. and the industry hustle. And I think that was when I kind of just got to a place where I'm like, I had a lot of very successful friends, and I'm like, I don't know that they seem super fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I see the people who are still trying to make it, and I'm like, that's what I'm going to be in like 20 years. And I don't know if I want to do that either. Like either end of the spectrum stopped being appealing to me.
It's so interesting to be in an industry and doing what other people would consider successful and just looking down at what you're doing and being like, I kind of see what the rest of this path looks like, and like it ain't right, like this isn't sort of what I want to be doing. So that's a really interesting moment. I'd love to, in the sort of transition away from talking about music, I'd love to know, like, obviously they're two very different art forms, music and magic, but you are quite unique in not only being someone who does both. There are some people that have done both, but someone that has had has been in the industry of both of those things at like the fullest version of what that means. I mean, in music, there's people calling on you for things. In magic, you're doing theater shows and corporate shows and AGT and whatever. Like, what did you learn about magic from music? What's similar or different about those things? Like for you?
Yeah. So one thing, obviously with music, it's one of those things that it's just a way to connect with people, right? Like you put on a song, there's just some songs that just pull the little kid out of a person. Like you play a song and it's just like, you see people connecting in that way. And I think, well, one thing, so this is one of the greatest like parallels that I make that I think really taught me a lot. It's just stepping into magic stuff. In music, I work with a lot of people who are amazing musicians. Like they know all about music theory. They know all like the technical scale, then like this, they just know all the things. And they listen to pop music and they're like, this is stupid. It's not even real music. It's all electronic. It's not even real instruments, right? And they get so mad. And those people often miss the reason that those songs connect with people. There's something about the simplicity. There's something about the repetition. There's something about pop music. It's why it's called pop music. It connects with it's like with popular culture, right? It connects with more people. And look, it's not to discredit those guys' skills and their talents and their ability to create something that musically is better, but also there's just something about understanding your audience. And because I was kind of doing both, I was doing more musical stuff, but also creating pop stuff. I just learned very quickly the idea of kind of dying to yourself. And I'm like, oh, this guitar solo would sound sick here, right? But it's like, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't, this isn't a time to just show off. And so when I started doing magic, it was crazy because I found myself in so many similar conversations where I would be like, I'm just trying to get just the perfect palm, right? And trying to do this. And I have huge windows in my fingers. And I'm like, everyone can see when I palm a card. I'm never going to be a good magician. And I just felt like guilty for not being really good at stuff. So I was trying to get as good as I could with sleights. And I memorized mnemonica, right? And I have a whole stack deck memorized and all these things. But I came to a point of just realizing I would be with people, and sometimes it was the most simple thing. And people talk about this in magic all the time. Like, you can do the most complicated card trick, and people are like, oh, cool. And then you do a double lift, and people are freaking out. And I think there's something about us as magicians that feel guilty about that. But that was what I applied in doing the magic stuff. Is like sometimes if we're creating an experience for people, the thing being more simple is not a bad thing. It's actually beautiful. Like if it's for them, it's beautiful. It's something that we get to do. And so anyways, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think it's really interesting, that parallel between the idea that in music, like a lot of the times, like it is so funny that the songs that stick with people are the ones that, like you said, have something really like simple to it and like the repeats and like, you know, whatever, which to an aficionado is going like, this song is dumb and it takes an amateur to make. And sometimes it takes an amateur to make. That may be true, but also if it's really just about how it makes the people feel and respond, then like that's what it's about. And it's the same thing in terms of magic. And you know, what's interesting is, you know, I've interviewed a lot of people and I learned a weird trend that people that get into magic later, especially for like corporate or like for the sense of doing it professionally, people that get into magic later get less caught up in learning 100,000 sleights and learning this perfectly and learning that perfectly. And they just get a little bit more into the practical. Because if you're like 23 and you're learning magic, you're learning an act. Like you're putting together a show and you don't have the time to sit and learn like 8,000 tricks and get lost in that kind of thing. And I think,
that's a good point.
It's like really reflective of what happened to you, which is like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like your first real step into doing magic was on AGT, like after being a kid. Like, were you running around doing corporate gigs in the years before you did AGT, or were you basically just winding up to do AGT?
Yeah, so like the first year, my wife and I were still doing a bunch of ministry stuff. Dude, we worked with this organization that helps women in like crisis pregnancies, and it was literally just me and my wife living in the attic of this house full of pregnant girls who were just going through crazy stuff. Oh my God. And a lot of them just some kind of abuse involved. A lot of them are victims of rape and things like this. And so we're just like helping these girls kind of figure out life and get jobs and get back in school and like kind of heal from these things. And we're literally living in the attic of this home with these girls. And I'm like doing magic tricks for them, right? Just trying to brighten their day. Like this was after I didn't make it onto America's Got Talent. And we just lived in that home. And then we left there because we were like, man, something's happening with this magic stuff. People are really responding to this. And I think the context in which we were using the magic and the people who we were doing stuff for, I was like, man, we're just getting such an amazing response. I want to focus on this a bit. And so that was when we just put everything we had into a magic show, and then the pandemic hit, right? And so we weren't able to do anything. So yeah, the first real magic stuff we did was on AGT. And at that point, I'd been practicing a bunch, and it was intimidating because I'm like, I got to do the most impossible stuff. Like I got to make sure that I do a magic trick that is better than any other magician. And then I got to a point where I'm like, again, sitting here thinking about my music career, and I'm like, I sound like one of these crazy, amazing guitar players that I had talked to in the past who's so mad about having to simplify stuff. And I remember, dude, so my finale episode, I'm like, what do I do for the finale performance, right? And I just kept having this image of like just talking about like what inspired me when I was young, these people who poured into my parents, and now like them taking a little bit of time from my parents, how that just like grew into something way more than what they could have imagined. And the visual that kept coming into my head was Snowstorm, right? And I'm like, there is no way I'm doing Snowstorm as a finale performance on America's Got Talent. And I keep trying to think of other stuff, and I felt so guilty. And I remember at that point, I had met I'm super close with Brent Braun. He's one of my best friends. Got close with Danny Garcia, and I was talking to Blake Voigt. And so sitting with these guys, I'm like, guys, listen, I keep having Snowstorm in my head. And I told them the idea of changing the context of it, of like, rather than doing the chopsticks and the fan and all this stuff, to do this whole thing around taking a word that someone chooses, like an action word, to do something that makes an impact, and then showing how that one little thing can become so much more. And then having that written on the confetti as the confetti comes down. And man, I'm just so grateful for those guys because they get it. And they were like, man, you know what? This isn't about, they're like that. The idea of Snowstorm, like the visual is beautiful. And they just really affirmed me. And I think this was like a huge thing. And I know that I would not be here without these guys, without Brent, and without Brent and Danny especially. But without them really affirming that thing of like, Dustin, here's like your superpower. It's not just being like the best magician, but it's finding ways to take like simple pieces of things and making people care about it, right? And like taking the context of Snowstorm and now adding something that's way more just personal and just different, kind of like revisiting that thing. And Snowstorm is an incredible trick, right? It's an amazing visual.
Yeah.
And again, that's not just me saying like, I'm awesome. It's more just, I think just goes to the point that I love and the thing that I really live by within magic, which is, what are the things that are true and authentic to us, and how do we take those things and connect with people, even if that means that the trick is going to be simple.
So, I want to talk about that, and I also want to talk about, some of the help from these guys, but I think like mentally, or like sort of thinking about stepping into AGT, there's some big shoes to fill, and in one hand, like, it's a really scary endeavor, but another hand, like, you really have to think about it in terms of television, in the sense of like, you can't be a better Shin Lim. Like that box has been checked. You can't be a better Franco. You can't be a better, like, these boxes have already been, exactly, right? Like these boxes have already been checked, and like, certainly maybe you could show up on the show or whatever, but like, there's no way to win it by trying to like do one of those. I guess, were you intentional in terms of stepping into the show that your sort of angle or your space would be storytelling, or that your space would be sort of the, I don't want to say the authentic angle, but like, if I was to talk about it like a TV producer, like, this is the authentic magician, this is the whatever, like, did you know you were stepping into it and saying like, I'm not going to win at sleight of hand, I'm not going to win at mind reading, I'm not going to win at this, like, what I will win at is like doing magic in this way? Or did it just kind of come from the way you are, and it sort of took its own form?
Yeah, maybe kind of both, and both a little unintentionally. I think, one of the things is there has been so many things done on AGT, so many different kinds of magic, and that makes it hard to think through new things. And obviously, just as a magician on a show like that, you're constantly thinking of things that other magicians did, and it's like, is the goal, like you said, is it just to be like, well, Shin did cards like this, so I'm going to try and do cards better, right? Like, are you just trying to outdo other magicians on the show? But I think that the real thing and the real kind of train of thought early on that I kind of started living by and thinking through things through the lens of on AGT was, someone had said before, and this is really interesting, and maybe this, again, offends some people, but someone said, like, it seems like being a magician is like the only like art form, the only skill you can buy, right? Like, you can go out and buy a guitar, but you're not going to be playing in a bar that night. Like, you have to sit with the, you can go in with $100, dude, into a magic shop, and that night you're making things float and disappear and change colors. Now, that's not to say there's not skills still to learn, but the reality is, to lay people, if I practice some kind of crazy levitation for years, and then someone else just goes and buys some simple thing in a magic shop, a layperson might not even know the difference.
Of course.
Is the reality, right? And the point that they were making was not that like magic is stupid and simple or whatever. The point that they were making was, they're like, it seems like the only unique thing about magic is like who the magician is, right? Like who the actual person is who's performing. Because if you can make something float for $25 and I can make something float for $25 and he can make something float for $25, then the only thing that changes the trick is like who you are. And I think that really stuck with me, man. Like, I was like, man, on AGT, I just want to be me. And the other lens that I kind of thought through things from was like, I mean, man, we worked with so many different people, just work with people within the church, outside of the church, from drug addicts to these girls who lived in this home. We just worked with a lot of youth. And the one thing that I've realized is, I feel like as humans, we have this thing in us where we can like sense when people are being authentic, right? It's just, sometimes you talk to a person like, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know if he was, so that person seemed kind of fake, right? We use these things all the time. And I think with magicians, like we come out the gate already with like strikes against us because we're lying, right? Like we're already lying, right? Yeah. And so like, I'm like, nothing in my hands. And it's like, well, that's already a lie. And so I think when you partner this art form, which is based around some form of deception, with these stories that sometimes we add to a trick just because it goes with the trick, but the story is also not true. I feel like people start to feel this like double inauthenticity. And so that's where the other thing on AGT was like, I just need to be me. I need to talk about who I am. If people like it or not, then it's going to be them rejecting me, right? Like, but that's what I think we have to be confident in. And this takes sometimes just character development in life to be okay with people not liking you. But I'm a firm believer in the fact that like, that is what makes you unique, is you being you. It's the only person that no one else can be. They can't go and buy you. Yeah. And so I think that combined with this idea of really wanting to be honest, because I just wanted people to believe it, man. And I think we've all been in magic shows where the guy's telling a story of this thing. You're like, this never happened. I already know this never happened. Like, there's a complete made up story for the magic trick.
Yeah. You know what? I think it's such helpful context for people that are, especially performers right now, that like, those are the things that resonate. I love what you said about, the difference between your $25 or my $25 and someone else's is, who we are, and that's the part that really shines through. And I love the angle. I think it's super interesting, and it's really nice to go against, like that said, the knocks against you in magic for doing something where you can actually choose to be authentic. And I know early on in my magic career, I very much struggled being like, what on earth do I talk about in a trick when a trick is something fake? And I don't experience fake things in my life. Like, everything I experience in my life is real and really happens, but then in a trick, it's something that is not real and doesn't really happen, Can you comment on that as sort of a weird sort of philosophical thing? But it's like, how do you decide, or how do you start thinking about what a trick is about, what it is that you want to talk about, when like, you pick a card, I know what you're thinking, like, okay, that is impossible. How can I relate that to something that happens or happened to me or whatever in life without that connection between those two things being authentic? How do you think about what to talk about when the trick is impossible, but you're talking about something that is probably possible or that happened or something like that?
Yeah. And this is where I think like the idea of educating yourself on magic principles is important, and not becoming so obsessed with like the tricks themselves. So like, and this is just to give honor where honor's due. I think this is like Brent Braun's superpower, is like getting people to really care. And I know even when he was on Penn and Teller, people said that thing. He did the any card, any number routine. Yeah. And he's just like, dude, you made us care so much about that one card, right? It's just the way that Brent kind of presents stuff and puts stuff together. And I'm really grateful for him because like, so first, like even when you said, how do you get people to care about that card? For me, within my style, if there's a card effect that I like, I'll be like, cool, let's do that. But then I also think, but wait, why do these have to be playing cards? Why does there have to be 52 of them? Like, could they be photos? Could they be postcards? Could this principle apply to, I don't know, like anything that I like to guitar strings? Like, I don't know, like what are the things that apply to me in this thing? And so, and it's funny you ask this too, because I find myself a lot of times I'll be talking to other magicians and they're like, oh, sorry. Hey buddy, can you go out there and shut that door? Yeah, come out there and shut the door. Yeah. Hi buddy, I love you. Yeah. Oh, hold on a second.
No problem.
And go hi. Say hi. Hi. Okay. Thank you, man. But a lot of times I'll wait for them to shut it so we can. Cool. Sorry. A lot of times I find myself talking to other magicians and they ask a lot of the same questions. And I'm like, well, what do you do? What do you like to talk about? Like, what's the last movie you saw? Why did you like that movie? Right? Like, and it's funny because a lot of times I start down these conversations, and maybe it's this part of me that I've like counseled people for so long, where I start to realize is this becomes far less about the magic trick. And some people are like, well, I don't know. I don't think I even know who I am. Right? Yeah. Like, you just get to this thing where it gets so much more deep and personal. And I don't think that means that everyone has to do like meaningful magic. But I think if you are goofy, if you're silly, if you whatever, I think to show that as part of who you are. But anyway, so for me, when I'm thinking through magic stuff, I often am like, what do I want? I kind of work backwards. I'm like, what do I want the takeaway from this to be, right? Like, what do I hope people get out of this show? And now that I have decided what I want them to get out of it, what are the stories or the things in my life that could help that? So now I'm automatically starting with an authentic story from me. So not even thinking about the magic yet.
Right.
What is the part of me that communicates the takeaway? And then as I started thinking about those stories or those aspects of my character, and I mean, I know you saw my show, I talk about having ADHD and, you know, all these things, my family and my childhood and these things. I started thinking like, what are the elements of my life that help communicate this? And once I figured that out, I'm like, okay, what would be some cool visuals to go with this, right? Like, what would be something that helps this tie in? Like on AGT, I'm talking about my parents' marriage falling apart. Well, where most people would be like, I want to do a torn and restored.
Right.
They're like, how do I tear up this playing card and make this fit with that? Rather than just being like,
it's going
yeah, my parents' marriage fell apart. So why am I not tearing a picture of, tearing their photo of like their wedding day or something, right? And again, not that everyone has to just do meaningful stuff like at that level, but I really just think starting with that thing, because I mean, you know, man, there's so many magic tricks. There's a wealth of knowledge out there of, if you want to create something that either exists or you can make it and you can find out how to make it from a book or from a YouTube video or something. And I think that's become my main process really. And I always like to run things by Brent too, just because Brent is really good. And this is the other thing I would say to other magicians is just have people who can be honest with you in your life. My wife is not into magic at all. And I always run everything by her and then by Brent. Like Brent, who can see things through a magic eye, and my wife, who like, that was stupid. I'm like, what? This just took me a month, but I memorized it. She's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't care about how you did it. It wasn't a good trick. And that's been like, it sucks to hear, but it's like a really good kind of, I think, they're like my checkpoints along the way.
So let's talk about, you know, having those people in your world. Specifically, I want to talk about, you know, Brent and Daniel Garcia. And, you know, it's quite a unique situation. Like all of a sudden you like put a trick together, you're an ADT, they're like, great, you made it to the next round. You're like, you know, I can't, you know, I need some help to do this. And I don't know whether Brent started helping you from the beginning or number two or whatever, but like, you know, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, you know, I need the help. And you invite Daniel Garcia with his toolbox of super glue and magnets or whatever, you know, it is.
Yeah.
You know, and Brent comes out and whatever. I'd love to hear about that experience, about working with some of these legends who really work behind the scenes, and what it's like to particularly be able to say, you know, I'm just going to have a quick little tangent. I work with a video editor and graphic designer and stuff, and it's always awesome working with him because I go like, here's what I want for this. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And then like a day later, he's like, I did it. And I'm like, okay, well, like you basically did it, right? And that's what I envision working with some of these guys is saying like, I like this element, I like that element, I like this, I like this. What can we do? And then all of a sudden, you know, you got magnets and flaps and whatever, and you know, you got it all figured out. So I know obviously it doesn't work exactly like that, but I'd love to hear like, what's the process with working with some of these guys like, and what was it like for you?
Yeah. Well, first, what was funny was that I had gone to there was like a magic club when I lived in Texas, and I went and this one guy lectured. And we were it was like all these guys who do like gospel magic and stuff. And I was like, I just want to be like challenged to create something else. And I asked him, and he had mentioned Brent Braun. And at this point, I'm like, I have all these like magic heroes now because I've had nothing to do but just sit and like look up magic stuff and research magic. And so he gave me Brent's number. I texted Brent. Brent never called me back, never texted me back. I'm like, all right, this guy hates me. I'm just some random dude. And so I went, so I have like, my one friend is a programmer. I have some other friends in the music world. So I just started creating magic with non-magicians, which I think actually was great, first of all, because they did not see things through a magic lens. And it was really, really cool getting feedback and ideas from people who don't think that way. But anyways, so my friend was with me when I went to AGT, where I created the first trick with that I did on America's Got Talent. And I went at breakfast the one morning and I'm like, dude, guys, I see Brent. Brent's there with another magician, AGT. I'm like, guys, that's Brent Braun. And they're like, what? I'm like, it's Brent Braun. I'm like, who's that? I'm like, he makes magic tricks. They're like, yeah, like to non-magic people.
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy. Yeah.
Like, yeah. But I'm like freaking out. And I'm like, I got to go say hi. Oh, but he never called me back. I don't even know if he likes me. He probably doesn't like me. But I just went up. I was like, hey, man. I was like, I'm Dustin Tavella. I reached out to you a while ago. He's like, oh, I remember you. He's like, I had a friend. He showed me. I was working on, in the beginning, I was making tricks where I was like combining music and magic performance stuff. Cool. It was great. He's like, I never heard from you. He's like, I thought it'd be cool to meet you at some point. I was like, wait, what? I told you. And it turned out I had his wrong number. And all this time, I thought he hated me. And I was just texting the wrong person about magic, which whoever that guy is, he's confused.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so me and Brent just kind of hit it off. And, we got to chat and stuff there. And then exchanging the numbers. And when I was going through into the live rounds, I was, kind of just calling on him and running ideas by him. And he was just like, and I would say this about him and Danny. I hadn't met Danny yet, but the thing that I think is so great about them, and obviously I knew Brent first, so the thing that's so great about Brent is they found my strengths, right? My strengths was not being the best, most skilled magician ever, because I had been doing magic for a year and a half at this point, 2 years at this point, right? But what Brent called out very early on, I think, again, was that idea of thinking through things a little bit different and the approach being a little bit different. And I think that's where me and Brent kind of built some really cool chemistry, was because we just started coming at things from these other angles. And when we were going through the live rounds, he was like, man, I want to introduce you to Danny Garcia. He was like, he's a crazy, brilliant mind. And it was the same with Danny from day one, man. I am grateful that these guys saw such value in me. I know when I won AGT, there was a lot of the magic community who, they're like, who is this guy? He's never even been to a magic convention, right? But these guys, they get it, and they saw something different, and I'm thankful. But it is hilarious being in a room with them, dude, because like, I think with magic, you need to be willing to just say stupid stuff and present stupid ideas and not be thinking of method and not be thinking of anything, just to throw stuff out there. And I mean, man, we have thrown around so many crazy, wild things that sometimes make no sense, but those things have sparked other things. And when you say Danny with his little bag of magnets and glue. Yeah. It's actually really funny because on an AGT, one of the rounds, and maybe this kind of answers your question more, but like, okay, we need to do this thing. We had this idea to have a postcard that was torn. And then we were like, but we want to actually tear it. I don't want to be the one to tear it because that feels magician-y. I want Terry to tear it, which means it has to be the actual postcard that ends up back at the end. But I want to light it on fire. I want to see it lit on fire. And it sucks because AGT, they cut around stuff to hide stuff. But the method of this thing we came up with was awesome. But anyways, we're like, okay, so we need to build this table that can have a bucket on it that's on fire. The thing goes in, the thing slides into the table. So anyways, we were talking to AGT, like, we need to build this thing. We need to build this quick, right? Like, we came up with this idea yesterday and we need it in 2 days to perform on TV. Like, it's just the turnaround of stuff is so quick. And they're like, we can't build that. We don't even know what you mean. And like, it's just going to be too much. You guys got to figure out something else. And Danny's like, here. Dude, he literally walked over to a trash can. This is a true story, bro. Walked over to a trash can, pulled out a bunch of cardboard, got some scissors, and built it out of trash. Built it out of, like, he just found the trash can. And he was like, here, just build a nicer version of this. And he hands them the table, and they just went and like built a real version of it. But dude, legit, I watched this man with scissors and duct tape and trash build this like fully functional table for a magic trick to ditch a flaming postcard.
Oh my gosh. That's, I mean, I know him. That sounds about right. You know, that's so awesome. It's such a cool thing to be able to work with, these brilliant minds and help basically bring these ideas into reality. Can you just give us a little bit more behind the scenes in terms of like, is this hey, I got 48 hours in a room with Brent Braun? Is this like, okay, we've got 2 weeks to come up with this, we're mostly on Zoom? Is this like what does it actually like look like working with these guys between rounds to make the next thing?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of different. This is where I'm really grateful for them. Like, I think that, again, like very early on, I was grateful that these guys just saw something in me and valued me just also as a friend.
Yep.
And so like, as we're talking about stuff and we're on the phone and figuring things out, again, like the further I was making it, the less time we had in between rounds.
Of course.
To create it, not only just to come up with the concept, but to write the script, because my stuff is very much about the scripting, but then also to build the magic and to create whatever it is. And so we had less and less time. And like even one of the times, because Danny lived in LA then, and so he was there, and he could just kind of hop over to the hotel as he had free time to come through. And like even Brent one time like just paid to come and to surprise me and just to kind of like work with me for that week. And again, it was just because these dudes are awesome. Like I feel like now this whole thing's becoming about them, and I'm sorry, but not sorry. Like these dudes, I'm here because of them. Like and not just because of their magic knowledge, but their friendship and their understanding, and them just seeing something that changed everything for me. And they gave me permission to speak, because I'm sitting here like, because sometimes they say stuff and we're all sitting there brainstorming, and I'm like sometimes intimidated, like I'm gonna tell Danny Garcia my idea for like I should just listen to whatever they say. But them just being humble enough to really listen and to really hear me out and to really validate just my thoughts. And there's times when I don't know, they were just humble, because obviously sometimes in magic too, you say stuff and then you try and it doesn't work. And I think for them also to just constantly affirm each other, to constantly be able to call other friends, I think their humility really was what impacted me more than anything, because that's how I want to be. Like the way that they were for me, I want to be that for other magicians, man. There's no ego on this. There's nothing. I mean, me, if anybody has no reason to have any kind of ego. I mean, I didn't win because of magic, right? Like it was the storytelling. It was the people behind me. It was the time and place that our country was in when I was on AGT. And so I think when we see things like that and we see each other as people who we can just help, it's just, magic's a really fun thing, man. I mean, who else gets to do this kind of stuff, right?
It's awesome. And it's really awesome that, the experience that you had with it. I know a lot of people have very frustrating experiences with AGT and frustrating with TV and things like that. And I'm sure there was a lot of challenges and frustrations, and I wish it's and stuff like that. But it's nice that it was such a fantastic experience. You didn't have to go at it alone. You had a great community of people that are helping you do it. I wanted to ask a little bit about those. I mean, look, AGT made the world of a difference in your career. So there's absolutely that many gripes, but what was it like for you? What was the part that you loved best about doing it? And what was the part that maybe was the most frustrating, or not even frustrating, like the part that people at home, either magicians or lay people, like don't know about the whole thing?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I was really grateful for, and I think one of the things that really helped me on the show was from when I was doing music stuff. I've worked in reality television before. I was the music supervisor of a reality show for a while. And I just know so many behind the scenes of reality shows. And I think one thing that people have to realize is like America's Got Talent is not a talent show. It's deemed that, it's titled that, but it's a reality show, right? It's a reality show about judges who people really care about, the celebrity judges, the contestants. Yeah. If the show was really about the contestants, then they'd have the contestants on all the episodes. But it's the judges who always come back. And it's new contestants every year. Like it is straight up just a reality show. And people get mad at that, right? And people are like, well, it's just because I didn't make up some sob story. And it's like, again, it just goes back to the whole pop music thing that I was talking about, where people, like what AGT is it's about characters and all these things. So knowing that, and I think having that understanding going into it was very helpful. Also, we've kind of always just had this thing where I wasn't there to win, to be honest with you. Like, I didn't even think I was going to get through the first round. Like, I'm like, they're going to be like, this guy's cool, but he's got nothing. So, but every round that I made it through, all the way going back to the real prediction, which is my wife 2 years before, when I picked up a deck of cards and she was like, you're going to win America's Got Talent. I think just like having people, who were celebrating me outside of just needing to win, right? So I felt like I could make the decisions that maybe the producers didn't agree with.
Yeah.
But I think also, and this is what I tell people all the time who want to be on AGT, I'm like, you have to realize these people are like seasoned professionals. They know how to make good TV.
Good TV, yeah.
And people are always like, well, the producers made me do this. And I'm like, I never really felt that from them. Like sometimes they would have suggestions, and the reality is if they're going to pitch to you what makes sense to them because they're artists as well, and they're going to want to paint things in a certain way. And if you paint a picture for them that they don't understand, they're going to have a hard time creating that for you, right?
Right.
Creating the set and all this thing. And I think finding that balance was really, really important. And trust me, there's times where it was frustrating because you're trying to explain magic and they're like, that doesn't make sense. And you need to do this and you need to say this. But I got to a point where I really did start listening to them. And not as like they told me who to be, but I'm like, this show has been on for so many years. Like these people know what they're doing.
The show's been on longer than you've been doing magic. So
exactly.
It's possible they've got something good to say about it, Like,
And look, I know some magicians who have tried to be on that show and they're like, well, they're just dumb. They told me that ambitious card doesn't work. And I'm like, well, maybe you should listen. I mean, so many people have done ambitious card on AGT and they're trying to help you to create something new and fresh. And sometimes, is that a challenge? Absolutely, that's a challenge. Like now you got to rework what you're doing. It doesn't mean you're a terrible magician. It doesn't mean that they're terrible producers. It just means that sometimes we just have to find, again, the balance to serve the audience that we're in front of. And again, I mean, it can be frustrating on those things, but I don't think those frustrations are anything different than working with anybody who's going to have a different opinion from you. Like to me, that's just life. And I like to actually take those things into account. Like when someone says, Dustin, I don't like your show, it's too preachy. I'm like, okay, what language can I change? What's making it feel like that? I'm not offended by that. I'm like, thank you for helping me. I don't want people to come in and think that. And then, so anyways, I think that, I think there's benefit to the things that frustrated me on that show.
It's awesome to get the behind the scenes about that. And, it's the same kind of thing that you get on Fool Us and AGT and any sort of TV and whatever is like people that have been doing this for a really long time saying like, look, that ain't going to work, And I remember shooting, I think the first time we shot Fool Us, but when we went out, the producers came out after the rehearsal and they said, again, we're very lucky to have the Fool Us producers. It is, I know, different than the AGT producers because they like really know magic, but they came out and they said, we think this table should be here. It will look better. At the end of the day, you can do whatever you want, but we think that the table should be here and we really want you to do it. We're like, move the table, man. Like move the table. Yeah. If that's what you think, then, move it. So I think it's really good advice for magicians in these avenues that like, if you're on someone else's TV show that has been doing it for so long, they know like their advice and their feedback is right for that show. It is closer to right than our first guess at those things. So and that stuff really, really resonates with me. I want to talk a little bit more about the style of magic, because over the course of your show and your AGT performances, you not only dip into, being really authentic and talking about your family and talking about, difficult moments and challenging moments and things like that, but also, a lot of it is things that one might call gospel magic. And I'm both referring to the like stuff about Christianity, but also like there's stuff about charities, and there's stuff about, things where you're really actually trying to not just tell a good story and not just say something about you, but like actually hope to affect people and actually hope to like, please donate to this thing, or like, let's take a moment and honor this or honor that. Like, can you talk a little bit about, especially the way that you're thinking about it? Because I think that like a lot of people, myself included, have a lot of challenges and problems surrounding the like gospel magic, especially, and I'll give a silly example of something which is, I think, quite a big hurdle in this style of magic. And it's the same as like motivational, inspirational magic, which is like, if I could do this and make these two ropes into one, you can do anything. And it's like, well, you can actually turn those two ropes into one, you're just holding it in your hand. Like, And like, that's like my big hurdle in that kind of stuff, which is if I could do this, you could do anything. And it's like, well, you didn't really do that. You're like, so like, what does that even mean for me? So I'd love to hear about your thoughts about not just performing magic that is authentic, but performing magic that relays a message and maybe even relays change. How do you think about that style?
Yeah. So one thing, and actually just as you were talking, I was just, so we were talking about sometimes the inauthentic thing that we can feel from a magician, right? When it's like, I got up there, and maybe sometimes we're more sensitive to it as magicians because we're like, oh, this trick, and I already know what story he's going to tell, right? But I think people feel that too, right? And they see it as just a performing art and not so much as a human being on their communicating. But unfortunately, I think people have felt that same thing in a lot of churches, if we're to be honest, like from a pastor, right? Like you feel this person who's just up there saying some stuff that feels almost scripted and recited and things like this. And now you combine these two things. You have like a person doing a magic trick who, and I know I gave the example before, like pick a card, any card. What is it? The King of Hearts? Well, Jesus is the King of my heart. Like that. Now you're combining these two things that sometimes fail to feel true, right? It feels like this forced thing. And I think because we've worked with a lot of churches and ministries and stuff, we've experienced a lot of people who've been very hurt by churches, and we've tried to take this approach of just really wanting to hear people and to not make anything we ever say feel scripted, because the minute that you start sounding like the person who just scripted something and didn't actually care, it's going to kind of trigger that stuff. And so I think within gospel magic, a lot of times to me, and this is not to knock anybody or anything, but sometimes it just feels forced. It's like you're taking a magic trick that you saw and liked, and then you're like forcing it into this like gospel narrative that I don't know, man. It just feels forced. And that's why for me, it's like, I always just want to start with the story. Like, here's the thing. I think with gospel stuff, with inspirational magic, you should be able to communicate this without the magic tricks, right?
Yeah.
Like you should be able to do that trick without the ropes, like the thing that you said, right? And then to say, it's kind of like this. And if you do want to do the rope trick, then find a way to incorporate it, but know that without the ropes, you should be able to still do it. And so, I think for me, there's just, again, that thing of like me knowing who I am. What do I want to communicate? What do I believe? How do I get people to a place of seeing inside not only my life, but my emotions and my feelings, which for me also means letting people in on my struggles, right? I think this is one of the problems sometimes with pastors or people traditionally doing gospel magic, where it's like, hey, broken person, I have it all together. Look at me do this magic trick and watch how I have it all together, right? But I think when you can let people in on the fact that you're a human too, right? And I talked in my show about the times that I've doubted myself, and the fact that like my wife is the one who got me back on track when I was valuing all the wrong things, and still to this day I get caught up in the wrong stuff. And I have people who have reminded me and encouraged me. I just think that lands with people so much more because they don't want to believe, and this is again speaking more to just the gospel and inspirational magic stuff. I just think that people have begun to reject the idea that there's any perfect human in the world. And so like, if you can stop trying to present yourself as that and find ways to truly not just talk about the world's trouble, but talk about your own. I think if you're trying to land these messages, my thing always is like, again, make it personal to you. What are you, not only what have you gone through, but what are you still going through that are going to make people respect you, because they're going to see your fight, not only then when they didn't know you, but their fight now.
I think one incredible advantage that you have, to just, comment on this, one incredible advantage that you have is that you led a full, interesting life with so many different aspects to it before magic, like you were a musician, you were the music industry, you were married, you were charitable, you were you like led this interesting life. So it's like you have this list of things, and not that it's not challenging for you to dig deep and identify what those things are, but I think a lot of us, like myself included, like there was no before magic for me. Like there was no, what am I all about? It's like, well, the first thing I'm all about is magic. So, and I think that problem arises for a lot of magicians to try to write stuff that is authentic and that is about their other beliefs and passions and thoughts and whatever, because so many of them surround this thing and it's so insular. So like, it's really interesting to, that so much of this is like, you should be able to express that idea like without magic. And I think it's possible a lot of magicians struggle. I know myself included, like, I start with the magic because that's like the thing I know most. I'm like, what am I going to tell the world about? Like, what am I going to say? What And that's sort of the wall that I run into all this time when I'm trying to make it about something, really, is like, it's hard for me to start with the what it's about and then to the magic, because like, I don't know, I don't have this bunch of things that I want to tell the world, or these stories that I really want to say. What would you say to a person who's like that, who's like, now I'm 30, which doesn't make that big of a difference, but imagine it's like you're 19, right? And this person says to you, well, what do you want to tell the world? And it's like, well, what?
I hate homework.
Exactly. Like, so what should I tell the world? So what kind of advice do you have like that for magicians who are struggling to find the things to talk about?
Yeah. Well, so this is going to sound like a very me answer, but then I'll bring it back to kind of your question. So for me, I think because I'm so big on like people knowing who they are and, working within the music world for so long, like, man, I've known people on both ends of the spectrum, the guy who's still the struggling artist and the people at the very, very top of their careers, most famous people in the world. And you see so many of these people who've placed so much of their identity into the thing that they do. And it's great, but sometimes it creates this like angst of like, I don't know, when your identity's in this stuff, it is hard to know what you like. It is hard to know how to relate outside of those things. And I think that for me, one of the big things that I always try and encourage people in is I've seen, again, people at the top within whatever their business or career is, as that thing starts to dwindle, it's like they don't know who they are anymore and they're fighting to matter. And to me, it's like, well, people, you do matter, right? You do have things that can relate with the world. I know people who would say that there's nothing special about me. I just feel alone, right? Well, right there, I think is a piece of something like, and not only is that a piece of a thing that you're going with and can share and going through, but it's something that actually a lot of people can relate with that is very personal. So if that is ADHD or anxiety, or honestly, the idea of like, I hate homework, even though I was just joking about that. The reality of like, if you're in high school and you hate homework, like, I don't know. I mean, and this is going to sound stupid, but this is just when I'm in a room with Brent, this is what happens. We talk about, I hate homework. Okay, let's start with this. Maybe there's some kind of torn and restored around homework and you're like, I can't do this. And then you restore your homework assignment or something. And this is a stupid thing. But this is where a lot of times these conversations spark with Brent, where we're like, what's just some funny premises or some interesting premises that are personal to this thing. And so like, I would say with you, man, like you're saying your life is magic and all these things. I think even part of that being a thing of just growing up in magic and starting a podcast and wanting to communicate. And you've always wanted to like educate people on all these things. Like there are things about you that are super, super interesting that are not just magic. Now they might have magic attached to them because it's a passion of yours, but like, I think that's one of the beautiful things about this process is it starts making you go through and find the other valuable things about yourself, the other interesting things, even if those things are struggles. Again, I think that people, and that's a part of the show too, in my show is like, that's one thing we can all relate with is like messy moments. We all have messy moments. Yeah. It's okay to have mess, but maybe there's magic that exists in this mess. And I don't know if that answers your question at all, but
it does. I mean, I think, I think, look, you're not the only person I've asked this question to on the podcast. And I think it's just interesting to hear the different angles of it, which is that, it always is something there. And it doesn't need to be the world's most earth-shattering thing that you're sharing or whatever. It is, most of it is a bid for connection and relatability than it is a bid for like, wow, that's the first time I've ever heard that thought, in my life. So, I think that part is really helpful. I'd love to talk for sort of the last sort of major thing to talk about before we get to the wrap-up questions is to chat a little bit about your show and to chat a little bit about Branson. Branson is a wild place. It is a place like no other. And I just interviewed Reza, whose episode will probably be coming out, a little bit before yours. And he talks a little bit about it as well. But for people who don't live in middle America and know what Branson is, like, can you just describe this place to the best of your ability so people can understand what Branson even is? Because that's where your show is.
Right. So Branson is a place where, I mean, like 10,000 people live here and then they get like 10 million visitors a year. Right. And it's gone through different waves of different reasons. Like at one point it was really big on country music and still it is still a lot of those country roots, but also there's some other young stuff that's come in. There's a lot more like faith-based stuff here than what would be in like,
Vegas,
in like a Vegas
whatever.
or something. Yeah, and not that stuff doesn't exist, but here it's like the headline, like the biggest show here is Sight and Sound, right? And they literally do Bible stories. And if you haven't ever seen Sight and Sound, I don't care what you believe or where you come from. It is the most incredible productions, stage production you'll ever see in your life. They're insane. It's amazing. So if you ever get a chance to see a Sight and Sound production, you should do that. But so Branston's a place. There's magic shows here. There's go-karts. There's, Silver Dollar City. It's the big amusement park, big theme park, I should say. It was just voted #1 theme park in the country by like USA Today and stuff like this. For its like theme elements, so like 1800 kind of, just like blacksmiths working. When you go through, you can watch them work in metal and all these things. But yeah, so it is a quirky little place. What's great is like you end up with families coming here. A lot of people drive because most of the country can get here within a day. So you have a lot of people who maybe even couldn't afford some of those other vacations to put their whole family on an airplane, but they can all drive, 6, 10, 12 hours to get here. We've loved it because there's a lot of like normal life stuff here too, a lot of free stuff. The lake is beautiful. I don't know how much you've actually done in Branson, but just so many cool things to do out on the lake. Yeah. The Ozarks are just gorgeous. And so people come here for all different reasons, man. They come out here for boating. They come out here for like fishing and hiking and outdoor stuff. They come here for the attractions. They come here for the shows. They come here for the music.
It's a wild place.
Some of it definitely a little behind the times, right? It's super quirky little place. Yeah. But we've loved it, man. We really, really like being here.
You know what? It is a place that blew my little mind because of everything you're talking about. Is like, on one hand, 10,000 people live there and it's like a quiet little city. And then the other hand, it gets 10 million visitors and 150 theaters and amusement parks and Ferris wheels and go-karts and ice cream stuff and whatever. And like, it's just funny that there's another Las Vegas that is a peach that no one's ever heard of, I described it as a docked cruise, like that's kind of what it's like. And it's huge and it's incredible. And I really do recommend that people go. It's some of the best shows I've seen in my life or, are in Branson.
Yeah. So, and real quick, if anyone is going to come, like just some recommendations on shows. So Sight and Sound, obviously is incredible. The Hey Goods, the big music show here. We just saw Clay Cooper, which I'm not a big country music fan, but a lot of these shows also incorporate like comedy and skits and all this stuff. Matt Gum is incredible impersonator and musician and comedian. Man, there's just so many, even I'm just saying outside of the magic world, right? There's a bunch of magic shows here. But even other things, like if there's people that are like, I'd like to come and see some random stuff. And also I say this stuff through the lens of like, oh, my family, I got 2 little boys, right? Like the stuff that they love going to. And really cool place. Obviously Ray's is here and Rick Thomas and Phil Dalton. And
I saw 4 magic shows and I saw the Duttons and it was wicked, man. It was a wicked time. It was really cool. Talk to me a little bit about your show there, because I think like to comprehend the journey, you go from doing AGT, which is like these one-offs, to basically, I know you were in Vegas for a little bit, but basically like having a pretty blank slate to make an event, a show that has all of the like best parts of a show that it's like, you don't have to pack small and play big, you're like, you can say basically whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can build whatever you want. So it's such a unique spot to be in. How did you go about? And it's still, by the way, I'm sure a bit of a work in progress. I know I was there for the 100th. How are you thinking, or how have you been, or were you like thinking about putting this show together basically from the ground up?
Yeah. So a lot of this is like, I feel like even through AGT, some ideas that I had for the show that maybe would have been too long to work on TV, right? Yep. Or just too similar to something else that maybe someone would have done before on the show. Some stuff that I just found and workshop different places and different spaces, different churches and youth groups. And I think really trying to find this stuff that resonated with people. Yeah. And really it's been, some of the stuff that I'm doing now is some of the first stuff that I came up with when I started doing magic. Some of it's stuff that we just made for this, but I think what's been really cool is kind of taking all this over time and refining this thing to really find out, again, like what strikes a chord with audiences. And like you said too, to not just try to be the next David Copperfield or Shinlin or whoever, but to really say, okay, I don't only want to apply this to TV, but to the stage. And so we've tried to create, obviously my show's a little bit more, if you were to categorize it, a little bit more probably within the mentalism category, right? I'm not a big illusionist. I do have some things in the show that are some illusion type things, but it's not a whole lot of like visual magic, kind of, but maybe some of the more of like the visual predictions. But yeah, I think just going through and seeing what exists in this town and what feels like it's still true to my style, and then what would feel different from those things. And again, making something that feels authentic to me. And again, just being really honest. And two, maybe just to encourage people who are listening to this, the show has taken so many forms, and it's not because I keep having new, better ideas. The show has taken so many forms because I keep getting more like bad feedback from, not everyone just gives you bad feedback, but I'm saying the one person who has a bad thing to say, who normally were like, that guy's a moron. I do really try and listen to that stuff. You know what I mean? And to take that into account. And what's really great about that is to ask honest questions, even to have people that I know ask people questions, because people aren't going to be honest with me. They're never going to be as honest with the artist as they are. So I think really finding out, like, what are the moments, what are the tricks that people remember, and asking questions like, what trick stood out to you the most? What was this trick? And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's crazy, because I would think it was this trick. And then some people are like, well, no, it was this, but the story with this part tied to this part. And yeah, I think that like this show right now is just the culmination of finding out what has connected with people. Even if it's not my favorite moments in the show, I've made them my favorite moments in the show, because if that's what's connecting with people, then those are the things that I focus on. And now we've gotten even greater reactions because we've taken the things that people are responding to and now giving them more attention, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I got to give you a lot of credit for that show, because not only did I think it was just fabulous, but the part that as a magician, was amazing is it was so much that I had not seen before, like a lot of them were like, versions of things, which obviously is like, great in the way that most of us do all of it. But like the quantity of the show I was like, I don't know where this is going, I don't know where this trick is going. Like, I don't, sometimes the magician comes out with something and you're like, okay, like I can just basically like, I know what it's going to happen. So a lot of them, I'm like, I don't know where this trick is going. Like a lot of it was really new and really fresh. And I thought it was fabulous. And a lot of it was just brilliant. So I had an amazing time there, and it was really, really great to see the show.
And just to give Brent another shout out too, one of these things when I got this place to a point where I really liked it, I went out to Brent. So Brent has his shop, a theater and magic shop in Louisville, Kentucky. Well, it's in New Albany, Indiana, but they just say Louisville because it's, but it's called JB Magic Shop. And man, I just, went out there. We did a couple of shows there at the theater, and he just kind of helped refine those things. And again, that's the stuff that's really fun, because what you just said, like sometimes a magician walks out with a thing, you're like, I know where this is going. Brent is really good and has really encouraged me. And now this is the thing I do all the time, of being like, well, why do I even need this prop? I like this trick, but why do I need to use the same prop? Maybe I can make this into a different thing, and sometimes that's enough to just make it start to feel different. And then you add a little bit of yourself to it, and now it feels like a completely different trick.
Love it. So, yeah. Brent is awesome, and it's so cool that he's had such a hand in all the cool stuff that you've been able to put together.
Yeah.
We are nearing the end of this chat. There's a couple of different sort of wrap-up questions that we asked. The first is about modern magic. So like, what's one thing in the world of magic right now that you like seeing, that you like that exists, and what's one thing that you don't like?
Yeah. One thing that I like, I think people are starting to dive in a little bit more and challenging themselves. Like, if we could answer that question maybe reversed. So the thing that I don't like is, I think how much now, like, you see so many people just posting the same things all the time, and even so much stuff being exposed. You see people doing tricks poorly on the internet, and it exposes it for the people who are doing well, or who are doing it, they practice these sleights. I just think the internet and people seeing stuff, it's made it hard to even do stuff in a show that people haven't seen, right? But I think the thing that I love about magic is that exact thing, because I think people are starting to now lean into, well, gosh, this trick's been done on the internet, 176 times. I might need to revisit some stuff and rethink through some things. And so I feel like there's a lot more magicians now kind of thinking through a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. Like, what makes my show unique to me? How do I do more than just a trick that I bought it in a package and then I perform it as is? I think the internet has almost forced that to start happening. And I think it's cool, and I don't know, I've just seen some people doing some things that feel a little bit more true and authentic to who they are, which obviously I'm a big fan of.
Love it. That's awesome. Really, really helpful. And it's cool that, one thing I really admire about you is just how positive you are and how authentic you are. And it's nice that you're not griping about the magic world for doing this or that. And instead, it seems like you're really seeing the cool stuff that's happening right now. And that part's really awesome. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, man. It means a lot. Thank you.
The next part of this is the endless chain. So in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be a really good fit for this show. There are 2 catches. The first catch is that I haven't interviewed them already, which is pretty tough because there's been like 300 of them. And then the second catch is that you have to be able to put us in contact. Is there someone who comes to mind for you that you think would be a really good fit for this show that we haven't had on that you could put us in contact with?
Yeah. I mean, have you had Brent on?
Yes.
Probably have had Brent before. Yeah. Let me think. I'm trying to think of someone who you haven't had on. Most of the people that I know, have you had Danny on and Blake and these guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I've heard their stuff on here before, but I have my one friend, Scott Syme, he was the one who I said was the realtor who was doing magic on the side. I mean, he's not like, full-time magician guy, but he's the one who really inspired me. But I feel like, what about Phil Dalton? He's here too.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to him yet.
Did you see his show when you were here?
Phil Dalton.
Yeah. He has a show at the same theater. So he's there.
No,
also,
I didn't. I didn't.
Waterscape stuff.
No.
Gotcha. So he builds some stuff.
That's a great name.
Some other illusions. Yeah,
that's a great one. I'm going to write that down. Last question is this. People have been listening to us chat about magic for like an hour or so now. And there's a lot of these episodes, a lot of these conversations. People are probably like walking their dog or washing dishes or something. If they're to take one thing from this conversation and keep it and use it, and one thing you think is the most important, what do you think the most important thing is that people can take from this?
Yeah, I would say the big thing is just, I think the constant discovery of like who you are as a person, what makes you valuable, and trying to find ways to implement that into your show. I always say, if you create a show where you got sick one day, like, could someone else just come in and fill in for you? And if they could, then maybe you need to visit that a little bit, right? Like, I want to know that when I'm on stage, if I'm sick, the show's just not happening. And again, not that anyone's going to like just step in for someone else, but you know what I mean, right? It's just, so.
Love it. Really, really awesome. Thank you so much for doing this and for joining us and for sharing everything in your story. And of course, a big thank you to everybody who listened and tuned in. Thank you all so much for listening and for being here. And we'll see you next Thursday. Ciao, friends.
Well, there you have it. I hope, of course, that you learned something. I hope you liked it. And this would be the opportunity to share this with someone and tell a friend. I'm trying to get you the best names ever in magic and ask them the most interesting and helpful questions. And all I ask in return for this lovely free podcast is for you to tell a magician who would benefit from this sort of thing. So thanks so much for being here. Hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you next Thursday. Ciao.